Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly.
Bob, just to say that your camera is still on.
Sorry, yeah, what?
Just saying your camera is still on.
Oh, well done. Thanks very much.
Bob, just to say that your camera is still on.
Thank you. Sorry, yeah, what?
Just saying your camera is still on.
Oh, well done. Thanks very much.
Just to say that your camera is still on.
Thank you. Sorry, yeah, what?
Just saying your camera is still on.
Oh, well done. Thanks. Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly. Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly. Welcome. Hello everyone and welcome to the webinar. My name is Bob Went and I shall be the moderator for the webinar. The webinar is entitled Delivering Net Zero Emissions, What Can You Do? And it will be presented by Ian Watt and Mark Williams of Scottish Water. There will be a short time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation, but please note the presenter's details, which will be shown during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation, should you wish to contact them for further information. Also, during the webinar, could you please post your questions using the Q&A button in Teams. At the end of the webinar, I'll put up a slide showing details of the following 2 webinars after this session. Thanks very much, everyone. I'd now like to hand over to Mark.
Thank you, Bob. And just bear with me while I get the presentation. Now, I'm assuming that you are seeing my screen.
Not right at the moment, Mark.
Not no. Right at the moment. Okay.
Yep, just come up in edit view.
Very good. Okay, well, thank you very much for having us on to say a few words this afternoon. I'm Mark Williams from Scottish Water, working on net zero emissions. And what we want to cover with yourselves today is to give you an overview of Scottish Water's perspective on net zero emissions, our journey and our plans for hitting net zero, but primarily is to really ensure that you understand and we're able to get across the need for the engagement with partners in the supply chain to support the delivery of net zero capital investment. So net zero is one of the big things in our strategic plan. This was launched in January 2020. And basically this sets out a strategic plan for the next 20 years, which focuses on 3 big outcomes, one of which is beyond net zero emissions, the others being value and service excellence. So clearly across all of these areas, there's a number of things which interact with each other, but for the avoidance of doubt, net zero emissions is going to be one of the key goals of Scottish Water in the coming years. And as such, we have to work very closely with stakeholders and supply chains to support this. And to that end, we launched our net zero emissions route map in September 2020, and you'll find that on our website at that address there. And one of the key things to maybe call out here is this focuses both on the operational emissions of our business, the day-to-day use of electricity, fuels, etc. in delivering service to customers, but also and critically in the investment emissions, the work we do with our supply chains to deliver our substantial investment programs through enhancing our assets and delivering capital maintenance across the asset base. So bringing all that together, both of these areas come together for our goal for net zero emissions by 2040. Looking into that in a little more detail, we can see that the operational emissions on the left-hand side there comprise around 250,000 tonnes carbon dioxide equivalents in 2019-20. And you see that's dominated by electricity at this stage. So critically, in terms of the efficiency of what we buy, the pumps, the control panels, and so on, efficiency of performance is going to be one of the key criteria that we are driving forward with in the coming years. But on the right-hand side there, we look at investment emissions. We've estimated using our tools that across the civil and mechanical electrical investments we make, there's around 200 to 300 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalents emitted per £1 million that we invest. And given the scale of our investment programme, this comes up to quite a bit. So this is about 140 odd thousand tonnes of carbon emissions associated with an investment programme each year. Our strategy to achieve net zero is founded on 4 key goals. First of all, to become more energy efficient, to drive down the emissions from our day-to-day operation of our services. To use lower carbon energy products, to look into the renewable technologies, how do we displace fossil fuels, how do we displace grid electricity from the use of our sites. Embracing low carbon construction, taking those embodied emissions out of the kit that we buy, the pumps, the steel work and everything else that goes into delivering our investment program. And finally, to recognise that we can't completely eliminate all of this stuff, we have to look at how we are going to store emissions that cannot be avoided, investing in our land holdings, growing trees, restoring peatland, etc. So focusing a bit closer on the energy intense services that we have, so water and wastewater treatment and pumping demands a lot of power. Again, and just to really reiterate, this focus on efficiency of kit is critical to reduce the consumption on site, looking at maximising energy from sludge and bioresource through advanced digestion and all the technologies around that, and also to look at the smaller generation on our sites. A lot of the PV systems that we have now, small scale wind, are now being used to power the sites that are providing services, even getting into areas such as battery technologies to maximise the amount of power we gain from sites. And then we look across into capital investment and emissions intensity there, and I called out earlier on the 200 to 300 tonnes per £1 million spend. The key approach that we've got to focus on there is about driving those low emissions options and designing for net zero. So we've developed the tools to understand the emissions that will be associated with different types of investment we'll make. And then within that, seeking to procure the low or zero emission construction materials. And this is very much part of the procurement frameworks that we've got coming forward that you'll hear about a little bit more from Ian shortly. And then finally about building using low or zero carbon construction techniques. So having procured low or zero emission materials, we have to make sure we are building in ways that also support that. And at this point, I'll pass on to Ian to take you through the remainder of the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mark. The next few slides, I'm going to summarise the intelligence that we have and highlight some of the areas that we've been working on in terms of our net zero ambitions. This slide here shows an extract from a route map and from the analysis of CCAT data, so that's carbon calculations of our projects. So it shows a breakdown of the data that we currently hold. It's in our initial breakdown of the areas of the capital programme which contributes to investment emissions. And as you can see, MEICA currently contributes to around 15% of the overall emissions. However, we do understand the capital programme is changing. Over the last 20 years, we've had some great examples of new infrastructure being built as a result of legislation compliance or growth or environmental issues. However, going forward, we now need to maintain that infrastructure, and our capital maintenance programme is going to double over the next 3 years and is forecasted to continue to grow. So we recognise that the split that we see here will change. In looking at the information we have and can currently obtain on MEICA plant and equipment, I have to say it's not great, and we need to improve upon our understanding of the carbon in the equipment and products that we're using in the capital programme. The target that we have is net zero, so we need to look at all areas, and that includes MEICA equipment and products. Next slide, please, Mark. In moving the net zero topic forward, one area where we have ongoing work is in the design arena. We've agreed common golden rules, carbon rules, for both Scottish Water and our delivery partners. So in the near future, our delivery partners will be coming and looking for carbon data of your products and kit to justify their designs. Another key enabler here is in standardisation. We want to ensure that in the standard solutions and standard designs that we have, that we've minimised the carbon of the products. Also, to enable comparison of options, we've been building carbon data within our new benchmark estimating system. And whilst we've been able to input the CESM4 civil engineering database into the new benchmark estimating system, we haven't been able to do likewise for MIACA products and kit. And currently we've had to put in some carbon curves that are at a higher level, and we need to actually start to be able to put actual products and data carbon values of MIACA kit into that system. Next slide, please, Mark. However, we do recognise that it's not all about the embodied. Where there is energy, operational emissions, we need to look at the whole life carbon of the product and kit, as we do recognise that, as you can see on the screen here, we've got a micro treatment unit that the operational and electricity use is the vast majority of the carbon in the whole product. So we do recognise that the embodied reductions that we achieve cannot be to the detriment of the overall efficiency of equipment. So we need to ensure, where we do have that operational part, that it's the whole life carbon that we consider. Next slide, please, Mark. So do we have a problem? And I'm sure those on the webinar will have a view on that. However, in addition to the change in the programme emphasis, we are acutely aware that as operational emissions have been decreasing over time, embodied carbon emissions have not. And again, unless we do something now, these will grow to be a larger proportion of the overall emissions. And we saw this highlighted in the Infrastructure Commission for Scotland report back in 2020, and an extract of the diagram of that publication is shown on the screen. The significance of capital carbon emissions will increase as the grid decarbonises and operational emissions continue to decrease. As I've highlighted already, M&E equipment is at least 15% of this total, but we know that's going to continue to grow. And again, to get to net zero, we must look at all areas. Next slide, please. So one enabler that we've put in place to help us on the journey is that we've influenced and supported the changes to the WINES data sheets to include carbon data. We understand that the WINES specifications and data sheets are in the process of being uploaded to the Pump Centre website, and this has included Scottish Water providing an embodied carbon calculator to help in the calculation of the embodied emissions. And the carbon calculator is also to be available on the Pump Centre website if you need that to support your journey. Next slide, please, Mark. Another enabling action that we've put in place is with our procurement team. We've set expectations for our suppliers on our frameworks. As a minimum, we're asking our suppliers to commit to adopting carbon saving practices and implement carbon management plans within 2 years of framework award. We're also asking them to demonstrate their approach and of how they're going to manage the carbon impact within the organisation and their own supply chain within goods or services. So it's not just the products of their own company, but it's also the ones that they also procure and buy in. We're also looking for the adoption of a circular economy and carbon management practices that deliver value. And ultimately, we are saying here that whilst you know, we're all on this journey, we're all on this journey together, and we do want to support everyone where we can on that journey. However, many of the companies are not new, and there are many large companies out there. So we are looking for you to take the lead as well and provide the carbon data of your equipment and products. Next slide, please, Mark. So today we want to challenge the Mica industry as a whole to achieve net zero. A key consideration will be the material and equipment that we'll purchase going forward in our capital programme. And we need to ensure that we're using low carbon kit. Data is key to understanding all of this, and it also helps us to understand where we need to influence. We need you all to be partners with us and come forward with the carbon of the products and services, but also identify areas where these can be driven down. And whilst at the moment this request is obviously coming from Scottish Water, I'm sure other water companies will follow our lead. It's not all bad. There are some companies out there with a limited number of data and products where we can get carbon data. However, this is going to continue to grow. So we'd like to stop here and open up the discussion. We've put a few provocations to you, and I suppose what we'd like to do is understand if there's anything that you've heard that gives you concern, or where we do see the blockers and issues where we need to work together to make this all happen. So I'll finish my talk there, and I'll hand back to Bob to open up the Q&A.
Thanks very much indeed, Ian. A couple of questions from me, if I may, to start the process. You spoke about the challenges with the Mica kit, and obviously there's a very, very wide range of Mica kit that's available out there. So how are you going to be comfortable and assured that you've got the correct carbon values from your suppliers for this very, very wide range of kit? I mean, there's a lot of work to do there, isn't there, both on the part of the suppliers, but also on the part of Scottish Water in getting that information and verifying it.
Yeah, I don't know, Mark, if you want to lead on that one. You're still on mute at the moment. You back, Mark?
Mute me again. Stop muting. Right. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that question. So yeah, this is hugely challenging. Actually, and let's not pretend anybody's going to get this right first time. Some people have, you know, some companies have made good effort around this one, but it's a maturing area, and we recognise there'll be a big range of experience out there. So one of the key things that we did was to create the embodied carbon calculator, which is available through the WIMES data sheets. So please, if you know, have a look at that. See what it works out for yourselves. But once you start to kind of work with it, once we start to see the data coming through, it's fairly kind of straightforward for us to kind of understand if it's kind of makes sense, if you know what I mean. But ultimately, we're going to have to see a lot more data coming through before we start to get a more standardized and a more kind of accurate reflection of all of this. But it's one of the areas we're calling out. The economy overall has to decarbonize. We're expecting carbon to be taken out of the products and services we procure, but we need to start to kind of target and understand what it actually is at the minute. So this is going to be a journey over the next couple of years to improve our data.
Indeed, and I think all of us would sign up to net zero carbon. It has to be the future, and it has to be the way in which we save the planet. But what about the resources that you're going to need to do all of this and assess all of these bits of information that come in?
Well, from my perspective, you know, we're actually asking people to kind of pull the information together themselves. So, you know, give us the data. We've started to create the data sheets ourselves. You know, the pump centre's been great in terms of updating the WIMES sheets there. As these data start to come through, along with, for example, the energy efficiency and all those other numbers you already provide, we'll start to get that picture. And I think collectively, because it won't just be Scottish Water asking for these data, all of the water sector is going to be getting into this area, and is already, some of the companies are already kind of pushing hard at this. So collectively, I'm looking for the more open source data to kind of really test each other on the values that are coming through. We're not going to sit here and carbon calculate everything and check everything that you've done. There will be obvious areas where things look correct or perhaps maybe don't look quite so correct. So please, if you're unsure, just complete the calculator and raise up if there's any issues.
Thanks for that, Mark. I've got a question from Mark, another Mark. How much consideration is being given to process emissions within the net zero mission? For example, waste air from the ASP process?
Yeah. Ian, you okay if I take that? Because that's a very live for us at the minute. The answer is a huge amount, and you know, I was on with the colleagues at Water UK from the other water companies just around this the other day. So from a Scottish Water perspective, we've estimated about 45,000 tonnes carbon dioxide equivalents from process emissions, 2/3 of which is nitrous oxide. Now, the steps we're trying to take at the minute, there's a lot of work to do, kind of the control systems we have, maintaining stable dissolved oxygens, trying to avoid nitrifying where we don't need to in carbonaceous works. There's a lot of primary work to be done about understanding the science behind it, developing the monitoring techniques, and then developing the technologies which will help us address this in the coming years. So a range of primary research, optimizing existing works, and looking for the new technologies is what the sector is really embracing at the minute.
Thanks for that, Mark. Got another one for you. This one's anonymous. Can you expand on the use of batteries /storage?
Basically, this is we're commissioning a new works, a new solar scheme at Perth Wastewater Treatment Works, which is supported by battery storage. Now, Scottish Water Horizons, which is the I suppose the commercial arm of Scottish Water, which is leading on the installation of all of this. They're the ones leading on that one. But basically, the kind of having the solar panels is one thing, but then recognising the demand varies over time. Installing the batteries allows us, I think, to ensure that we're capturing and using 94% of the generated power on site.
Okay, thank you. I've got another question. This one also is anonymous. Have you any issues with providing sites with diesel backup generators with regards to emissions, etc.?
So obviously in that respect, that's one area that we want to look at to see if we can reduce that down. In terms of, you know, can in the construction programme, can we get an electric connection sooner rather than later? Normally, you know, it's a case of looking at the programming of events. So this is where we are having to task our delivery staff to think just that little bit differently. So it's not using any new technology, but just, you know, how throughout the construction process can we actually minimise emissions that are created. And as I say, you know, if we can get an electrical connection sooner, then so much the better. But we're also working with the likes of the supplier of you know, the kit and equipment. And again, can we adopt, you know, renewable technology in you know, supplying our site cabins as well? Because not only is it carbon emissions, but we're also aware that generators can, particularly diesel generators on site, can be a noise pollution as well for our customers who may, you know, be living nearby as well.
Thanks for that one, Ian. I've got another one here for you. Again, this is anonymous. What are Scottish Water thoughts on the use of pumps as turbines as a vehicle to help towards carbon net zero targets?
Basically, I mean, so the kind of the inline generation of power from water systems and kind of having more having kit which allows us to do these things. We need to see what the technologies are, how they stack up, how they pay back, and what our best choices might be. So with that in mind, at the moment we've got some very bold goals around generating renewable power. Obviously, things like solar PV and various other such technologies are very attractive in terms of price and paybacks right now. So just understanding the basics around kind of the carbon benefit, carbon impact, price benefit, price impact of these technologies, and how and when we might use them. It's getting those data out there and understanding where they fit into the overall portfolio might have. Obviously, as well, with the acceptability of any kit that might be in the water system, given the standards there.
Thanks very much. I've got a question here from Sarah. Sarah asks, will storage be provided on your own land, for example, tree planting, outsourced, or a combination of both?
That one is very much so we're very clear in our route map that we are seeking to do this on our own land holdings. So obviously on our own operational sites, that's relatively straightforward to work with our operational colleagues, identify areas for improvement, creating small woodlands and so on. We have huge estates in Scotland that we're working with partners on to see, well, what's our opportunities to do things there. Peatland restoration, we have a fair amount of peatland on our land. Not all of it's in poor condition, but it's one of those key target areas that we're focused on. So we're looking at a number of different ways there to increase carbon storage.
Okay, thanks very much in that. The last one, I think, from me, we've spoken about a number of challenges and a number of things that are going to be necessary to achieve net zero. What do you see as being the biggest challenge?
Ian, do you want?
Yeah. So there's two things. One is people's behaviours. So there's a behavioural change that needs to occur. But as we've been highlighting today, we need data to improve our understanding and also help us focus on where is it that we need to focus to reduce carbon overall. So they're the two main things from myself. Mark, I don't know if you've got anything you'd like to add.
I would say boldness and trying to see what works, because there's no one right way. We don't have all of the answers, and we're going to need to have people coming forward with some solutions and trying to, I suppose, find the pilots, find the means to move forward. I mean, the sense of pilot, fail fast and learn fast is probably one of the mantras we'll have to have.
Indeed, yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed, Ian, and thank you very much indeed, Mark, for that very interesting presentation. And thank you, everybody, for attending. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to show on the next slide the next two sessions, and look forward to seeing you there if you can attend them. But otherwise, thanks very much indeed, everyone, and goodbye for now. Thank you. you.